What is your darkest secret? I inherited a butt-ton of money and haven't told anyone for years. I have lived very modestly, but one day I plan on completely disappearing to my countryside house, where no one will find me. I worked in a crematorium in the late 80s. We had a shelf in the back that we stored cheap plastic urns on. One night as I was sitting and waiting for one cremation to finish, there was a loud crash that scared the sh*t out of me. When I went back to look, the shelf had collapsed. I ended up just scooping the ashes back into the containers but never told anyone about it. One summer, I fell in love with my cousin when I was 13 and she was 14. During her visit, she kissed me. I said we couldn't do that again and she agreed. But she added that she was glad that we kissed at least once. Nothing else physical ever happened between us. We still see each other sometimes now. And every time we're together. I wish she could have been anybody else's cousin. Just not my cousin. She once told me outright that she wishes the same thing. She brings her husband to family reunions. Of course. He and I look alike. Have the same hobbies. Share the same sense of humor. Etc. But so far, nobody seems to have noticed that she married my clone. I asked her about that once. She said she really does love him and she loves her marriage. But she added, he was the next best thing. TL. Drive. I have had an imaginary girlfriend who I created age 14 as a result of a series of trauma-induced psychotic breaks who I still see when I get stressed or sad or lonely. At the age of 14, during what I would later come to find was a series of psychotic breaks, I hallucinated having a best friend named Morgan Gamble, who I met whilst reading alone at my neighborhood library. Over the course of 2 years, I would create an alternative narrative to reality in which she and I hung out and generally did stupid 14-year-old stuff together. When we moved to my parents' next posting, we said we would write to each other. I sent letters every week for half a year. Got nothing in response. Because of course I didn't. And stopped writing. About 5 to 6 years later, I'm in college and at the recommendation of a friend, I start seeing a therapist. And we start dredging up past traumas and scrubbing away at the scabs in the hope of getting me to stop having a panic attack every time I smell bacon, burning hair, or hear a loud sudden noise. We dig deep. I cry a lot. Develop a brief alcohol addiction. The usual. We come to happy moments. And I mention Morgan and how knowing her and having her friendship helped keep me from going off the rails. I try to reconnect with her. And eventually, through a few months of picking and prodding, reality seeps in and I realize that I was a fucking wreck. Which, therapy helped. Thankfully. I've never told anyone, other than my therapist, this. When I get stressed or am having a very bad time, Morgan shows up, looking the same as she did over 2 decades ago. I'm kind of hoping I'll always have her to talk to. My first love passed away 7 years ago. We were meaning to travel to Belgium on vacation and further studies, but she never made it. To this day my parents don't know that I used the funds of the trip in her, unfortunately, last chemotherapy treatment. Later on, that was the reason for me to study and work in Belgium for a couple of years, carrying on the dream we had together. Even though I was broke both financially and emotionally. Edit. Just to clarify. Because someone already pointed out it could be ambiguous, instead of investing the money for the trip to Belgium, it was used for chemotherapy. My parents never knew she died, but believed we broke up. which is why they never understood my rollercoaster of emotions while abroad. But hey, all things considered, let's just take time in our lives to celebrate the positive and reasons to keep on living. No reason to dwell in the past. Edit 2, for the ones asking, why lie? First I will start by saying, I by no means justify my actions or their validity. It was mostly an emotional and coping response. The logic, reason behind it is that I didn't want to accept she was gone. I couldn't handle her absence and somehow wanted to create the illusion that she was still here. One of the ways included pretending that we just broke up and include my parents in the thought. If they ever asked again for her, she was somewhere living her life. It was not an easy decision to make, and now that I had the time and courage to confront the truth, I question my action route. I can't change the past. That's how I reacted. May not be the best solution, nor a smart one, but it was a mechanism to not let myself spiral down into depression and stop my wish to live. My wife hates me and I want to make it work. I'd do anything to make it work, but she just doesn't love me anymore. I talked her out of a divorce a couple nights ago, but I feel like all I really did was buy us maybe another month. I can't lose her, but I know it's ending. I can't say this to anyone that actually knows me. I don't know what to do. I got my first BF when I was 19. He was also 19. The relationship was incredibly toxic and abusive, the level of "I'm not allowed to pick my clothes or friends or classes without his consent" kind of abusive. Later on, he would throw furniture at me, try to break my arm with his bare hands, threaten to kill himself if I left, kidnap my dog, and stand in front of my car so I couldn't leave. I was trapped for 2.5 years. During that time, I was falsely accused of having a sexual relationship with my co-coach who was 45 at the time, when in reality, my BF was cheating on me. So when he wanted to lose weight, I told him I would cook for him what he thought were healthy chocolate protein shakes were actually full-fat chocolate shakes with about a cup of added sugar per serving, plus protein powder. He gained 40+ pounds over a year. I want to feel bad about it, but I had to call the cops on him for domestic abuse. So I don't. I called DCYF on a friend and her kids eventually were removed from her home. Still doesn't know it was me. Wouldn't you like to know whether boy? I have a foot fetish. I really wanna explain what it's like because to me it's not fucking fun at all. Think of a foot with a sock on like seeing a girl with a bikini on. It's nice. But you don't get to see everything. With shoes on they're basically fully clothed. Now when the sock's off it's comparable to see a girl naked. That's how arousing it is. Beaches and pools are miserable to be at because I have to hide my and people who wear open-toed sandals or have their dogs out are my weakness, and I get uncomfortable around them because they don't know what they're doing. It's also really made fun of because it's seen as weird. But I was born with it. It's a gift and a curse. That being said, when I'm in a relationship, if they are in the mood they can just take their socks off. So it doesn't take much. Also, people joke about foot fetishes in front of me without knowing I actually have one, and it makes me super uncomfortable to the point where I have to leave the conversation because I feel super judged. Edit. Also, not every foot is attractive. People who have foot fetishes have their type of foot they like. So just because you have feet doesn't mean someone with a foot fetish will be attracted to you. Also no. I'm not disgusting about it or weird and shit like every depicts. I'm a normal fucking human being just like you. I'm ashamed to talk about my essay because my attacker was a woman. I am too. Male. I've been selling my foot pics and videos pretending to be female for years. How many times a day that I wish I would die. Depression is a absolute cunt. I am fairly certain that a medication I took for 6 months about 12 years ago is responsible. Don't sick the admins on me. I keep on keeping on. My survival rate for my bad days is 100%. Edit. The medication was Chantix. And wow, the support I have gotten. Thank you and I love you. About 16 years ago, my parents, 51M, 49F at the time, got a divorce because my mother turned out to be cheating on my father with a 15-year-old she had met in church. Once the divorce was finalized, my father began to date his biological cousin and almost married her. This is the TLDR version of what happened, but it was a whirlwind of WTF moments for about 3 years as everything came out. To this day, they act like nothing either of them did was wrong. I was about to say that I fucked my stepsister, but then I remembered this isn't anonymous. Almost got me, haha. I convinced my rapist to let me tie him up under the guise of a sexual favor. Then recorded him apologizing to me. Then I sent the vid to his mother. My best friend and husband know about this. I once was involved in a university black market where they handed me out past exam papers because our professor never hands out one for us to practice. I studied them with a friend of mine. A week after, it was the exact same exam word for word. Only the year changed. I memorized the answers off by heart. I finished in 45 minutes. Fucked around and pretended to think for 2 more hours to avoid getting caught. I got a 95% in an engineering exam with a poker face. Not my deepest secret, but a card I keep pretty close to my chest. Nearly every week of my life since age 19. I've had a vivid dream about my high school girlfriend. I'm 47 now. My mum is an alcoholic with schizophrenia. She was pretty abusive to my dad and me. My dad died from terminal cancer, but once when he was ill when I was 18 I came downstairs after hearing shouting to see him sobbing on the floor begging her to stop screaming at him. It was only the second time I'd ever seen my dad cry. All the abuse and I'd never seen him break down. Something snapped and let's just say I got physical with her, which culminated in me whispering in her ear that if she so much as raised her voice at him again she'd leave in a body bag. I think she knew I was serious as she cut most of her shit out. I did a favor for an organized crime figure in the 90s.